All right. Okay, so there's a brief agenda I hope you're all seeing. Um, so off we go. Map of the week. I thought this was interesting. Here, this little splotch of land, Bangladesh, has 166 million, and this huge swath, which is Russia, has 144 million. That got my attention. Um, Good news of the week. Donald Trump really worked himself into a frenzy about this transgender teenager who, biologic male, competed as a female, winning I think the triple jump outright. Um, but rather than cause a big fear war, the athletic organization just decided to set up a special category for transgender, and so everybody got a medal. And nobody was denied anything. The third place winner was not bumped off the stand. The first three biological females were there along with the transgender. And I thought that was just kind of a nifty way to finesse the whole thing. So hopefully we can get some common sense going. The other good news is Trump has unified all the communities at Harvard. So that's good. Yeah, Jim.
I did understand that she was booed during the race, though,
I
when she
think
won the 200 meters, I think it was.
Okay, the article I read said that there were counter protesters outside with a bullhorn, and the announcer inside at the PA system admonished them and asked them to stop, and they kept on for about a minute, and then the meet continued. But I will defer to Jim because he is our expert in all things track and field.
No, I don't think the two, what you said and what I said, are mutually exclusive. There was booing during the race, which was 25 seconds. I mean, I don't know how long the boos went and what was inside the stadium or outside.
But I think we're all happy it didn't blow up into something major. Yeah, Shigeko.
I thought I heard on the news this morning that Trump was going to take away funding from the LA schools because she ran the track and field race, but I didn't realize there was medals for everybody. Does he know that?
he he knows what he wills himself to know, and if he can keep hyping this thing for a reality show, he will. But
Oh,
I'm not surprised. Okay,
Hey,
so
John, just before you leave, I'm not sure everybody got medals. I'm going to tell you how I understood it. In other words, if if that athlete won first place, they were going to give out two gold medals, a bronze medal, and a silver medal. Whatever, if that person won a certain medal, they were going to have two people receive that medal, is what I'm getting at.
hmm.
Not all eight people got. Well, maybe they did get medals because you can see.
Yeah, I think the two women in front got gold medals. I
yeah,
mean, well, call them what you will, but
yeah.
Maybe there were four of them. Oh, I see. Well, yeah, I can't. I thought it was like if she won a medal, somebody else was going to get a medal too.
Right. They both got gold.
They both
Right.
They
So
both
there were four medal winners as opposed to just 3 medal winners.
Yes, that's right. Okay, onward and forward. So this is what we're going to quickly talk about, I hope, quickly. So measles, we had a measles case in the Bay Area, and the public health people jumped right on it. This is where the index case wandered to. But fortunately, in the Bay Area, we have 98% immunized. So if there was 2% that happened to be in any of these 3 places, they needed to check in. But that, fortunately, isn't the case. And I found this statistic interesting. So with measles, an index case that goes wandering around in a population that is not immunized up to speed, 14 people can get sick. Now, this is a very sophisticated calculation that epidemiologists make, but I thought this generalization was interesting. So that's measles in the Bay Area. And then there's been some talk. Robert Kennedy Jr. wanted placebo-controlled trials for vaccines. Well, that sounds reasonable, but that's not the way vaccines work. Ever since, and it's been codified in Helsinki, where the ethics of medicine was discussed in detail, and the agreement was for vaccinations that you don't have to, with a new vaccination, compare it to a placebo. You have to compare it to the best available vaccine. So you get the old vaccine versus the new vaccine. And that way, nobody is having to forego a protection. And that's the way we do flu shots. And that allows a new flu shot to be available in months after one of these truncated trials. That's the way it's been done historically. So the Salk polio shot, and it was a shot at the beginning, lasted for 6 years until Sabin's oral vaccine was available. And then these two were compared to each other. You didn't have to start all over with the Sabin oral with a placebo trial. Ditto with improved measles vaccine. And ditto with polio, pneumococcal, which protects against pneumonia, whooping cough, and vaccines. Just to remind Mr. Kennedy, wiped out smallpox and saved millions in COVID. And so that I just wanted to clarify that, because you get some of these vaxxers talking about the need for placebo trials, and that's nonsense. Okay, election analysis. Any comments on medical stuff?
Yeah, this is Tom. I got a question for you. I'm over 70 years old. But from what I've read, and maybe I even heard this at last Tuesday's meeting, some of these vaccines, like what do you call it, the DPT vaccine, it only lasts for a certain period of time. So like in my case, you got to get a DPT vaccine every so many years. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's mainly for tetanus. I think optimally it's every 10 years for tetanus. I think they're discovering that the P is pertussis, or whooping cough, And I think they're discovering that it's good to get updates of that too. But I haven't been practicing for a while. I'll ask any of my physician colleagues to correct me. Okay, off we go. Election analysis. This is a very sobering map. This is a map of the United States showing shifts towards Trump in the last three elections, and that's been unfortunately what we're paying for. This is the shift towards Democrats, which is very sparse. Not actionable, but here we get into some stuff that's really interesting, and it shows by generations, and they've lumped the millennials and the Gen Z together. So the red are all voters that have been born since 1981. And they are the ones that have shifted towards Trump the most. Okay, so this is the line here with 0. And on this side is Trump, and on this side are the Democrats. And we see that the Gen Z and millennials are still solidly Democrats, but decreasingly so. And it's this drop here that probably made the difference of young people, youngish people, below the age of around 45. The bad part is that the Gen Z and millennials are now a plurality of the electorate. They're the largest block. And they've gone from being 21% for Democrats to being only 7% for Democrats. And hidden within this group are mainly non-whites who have shifted. The other statistic was that social media played a big role, particularly in the couple of weeks before the election. And it had reached 60% of this group of millennials and Gen Z. And Trump going on the so-called broadcast was a major development, it turns out. And the other problem was the left wing criticizing Harris and the Democrats on Gaza. That threw, for different reasons, both Republicans and Democrats, more in the direction of Trump. And then TikTok, news from TikTok, of course, that's the younger generation, and they were more likely to switch Republican. So there's something about TikTok, which is a Chinese company, that is making an impact. I'm making gross generalizations. That's worth a week worth of talks. I just wanted to summarize that. It was the economy. James Carville reminded us it's the economy stupid back in the Clinton days. The younger generation obviously are less likely to own their own homes, but they have a different unemployment rate than the general population. Their unemployment rate is 12%, whereas for the general population, it's 4%. So it used to be 8% for this, but now they're up to 12%. And they, because of their economic circumstances, the percent of money that they have to spend on automobiles and transportation takes up a bigger proportion of their income. So they're very sensitive to that, and they were especially sensitive to the inflation from COVID. So that's the bad news. The good news is all of that stuff is transitory. They're not dyed-in-the-wool Republicans or conservatives, and they're still persuadable. So there's hope for the future. And there's hope even now. If you just look at the first few months of Trump's time in office, look at the drop among the under 30s. It's just plummeted down below, and all adults it's down as well, but it's really down. So these people that switched and voted for Trump, they're not permanently there. They're persuadable. Okay. And the fact that this group doesn't have strong ideological convictions, turnout was low. And so they just are motivated by what's going on with their economic circumstances, and they didn't turn out to vote for Biden the way they did before. Why are they like that? They came of age at chaotic times. The Millennials came of age at the financial crisis, and Gen Z came of age during COVID-19. So they've taken the 1-2 punch. The Democrats, though, have a chance if they can offer some stability, particularly with the economy. Trump performance. I love this. Have you all heard about taco? Trump always chickens out. So his inconsistency on tariffs, he's moved back and forth on them 50 times since he took office. So this is hurting the Republicans. The courts are also hurting the Republicans. They've lost 96% of the cases that have gone to federal court. This is with Heather Cox Richardson's calculation. And the judges that ruled against the Republicans, it was nonpartisan, both Republican and Democrat, ruled against Trump. Trump's big, beautiful budget bill is a bomb, and this is Ezra Klein, who is not given to hyperbole. So why is it a bomb? Medicaid, that's the big one. We've been talking about and worrying about, wringing our hands about Medicaid, and here it is. That was the only thing they could cut, and the House did cut it. Whether the Senate goes along, we'll see. The Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan, calculates that 10.3 million Americans are going to lose the health care that they gained when Obamacare was extended. And of course, Trump hates Obamacare because he hates Obama. They're going to cut the ability of the states to fold their Medicaid patients into the Obamacare mechanism. The other problem here is covering undocumented. Now, it's controversial, but less controversial is covering children for preventive vaccines, like we've already seen. And we see if the children in your population aren't immigrated, you've got what's called a lot of wood. In case of a forest fire, what you don't want is a lot of wood. And if you have a lot of tinder in your population that can spread measles, as we talked about previously, that's a problem. And also for pregnant women, of all the preventive interventions, prenatal care is one of the most effective for obvious reasons. So they've been covered by at least 14 states. Yeah, Shigeko.
Have to include all the senior citizens that are being covered by Medi-Cal in the nursing homes.
Um, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with that. I haven't read anything about that, but you're right. A huge chunk of nursing home patients are covered by Medi-Cal, Medicare, but to the extent that Medicaid gets decreased, that'll certainly affect that group. You're right. Michael.
Yeah, I mean, in that same vein, because there are a lot of people they call them dual eligibles, and uh, Medicare. I mean, Medicaid is paying their Medicare premium. So if they pull that out, there are a lot of these people. For instance, we know somebody, Terry, who has coverage at Kaiser only because Medicaid is paying his, or Medi-Cal is paying his Kaiser the premium he has to come up with. So I don't know what they're going to do when people, nursing homes and other people who have dual coverage under Medicare. Uh, I mean, these are older people or people with significant disabilities. I don't, I just I don't know what they figure they're going to do.
No, it's going to be bad, and of course, every time coverage gets expanded, we all celebrate. But the flip side is that it can be withdrawn, and that's what the heartless Republicans are trying to do.
Yeah, didn't one of the Republicans just say, just let him die?
Yeah,
Basically,
I'll get to that. I got a slide on that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Ebenezer Scrooge.
Senator Ernst,
Ernst, right.
uh, coming right up. Um, but what's Fox News response to this pending Medicaid crisis? They mentioned Medicaid once, and then in the same program they mentioned Biden 39 times. Heather Cox Richardson calculated that. Yeah, here you go. This is Joni Ernst, who at a town hall meeting defended Medicaid cuts, saying, "Well, we're all going to die." And the next day, she came back to defend herself and made things even worse when she said, "I'm glad I didn't have to talk about the tooth fairy," implying that a Democrat denial of death is in the same vein as not believing in the tooth fairy. Well, and then she offered her faith as a corrective, throwing in another challenging comment. I'll put it that way. Yeah, so that's Senator Joni Ernst. By the way, she's a veteran and was quite a decorated military veteran. Elon Musk. Okay, we got a lot to talk about Elon Musk. And if you want even more detail, this is the New York Times daily podcast. And it's the New York Times reporters have been doing a deep dive on Elon Musk, in particular his personal life. So if you're interested, run that down. But is Elon Musk being forced out by Trump, or is it the 71% drop in Tesla's income that's disturbing him? Hard to tell. This whole Doge thing, he met only a sliver of cost cutting goals. He came in with very grandiose plans, $2 trillion out of 7 trillion. That was never going to happen. But he's done enough damage with 260,000 firings and buyouts, and you can expect there's going to be problems with the Forest Service, forest fires. You can expect that there's going to be a drop in revenue from the internal revenue, which is shooting yourself in the foot if you're really trying to reduce the a budget shortfall. And then the energy department that does such things as monitoring nuclear waste. So the safety there. So I think the Republicans, by their own rhetoric, they keep saying there's fraud and waste, and fraud and waste becomes a mantra. And when they get in there with the chance to do something about it, they find out there's not that much fraud and waste. So they're a victim of their own rhetoric, and this is a moment of comeuppance. And I talked about James Carville saying it's the economy, stupid. And remember, he was the one that also said Democrats just play possum and let the Republicans shoot themselves in the foot. The whole concept of jujitsu, letting the momentum of your opponent do them in, and that's what seems to be happening. It's what happened with the first Trump, and it seems to be happening again. And it's not over. The New York Times calculated that there are about 20 or so time bombs that are going to go off, and one of them is going to be FEMA, and probably sooner rather than later, because we're entering hurricane season. And then this whole thing sitting in the background is bird flu, which is not being as well monitored as it once was. Okay. So when did Trump abandon Musk? And we all knew it would happen. We watched Trump abandon person after person, and even his own vice president in the last term. The vice president might come in his crosshairs again. I guess a magic moment came when he heard Musk was sitting in at the Pentagon on meetings about China. And that allowed him to express his displeasure by claiming that Musk wasn't making the cuts, and that what he promised that was all this, which I won't say out loud, and that Musk was 50% genius, 50% boy. Yeah, that's about right. Now, it might not just be Trump's natural personality. He may have had some help with drugs along.
You mean Musk, John, right? Not Trump.
Yeah, Musk. I
Although
do mean
you
Musk.
never know.
Thank you. You got to keep an eye on me. Thank you. Yeah, Musk. And so the New York Times reported that he's had some bladder damage that comes with the chronic use of ketamine, and Pepper's going to help us fill that out. I'll just say a couple more things. It's quite specific. It's ulcerative cystitis, which is every bit as bad as what it sounds like. And you see a moment like this, you can imagine that he's maybe high on something, whether it's ketamine or ecstasy or mushrooms, all of which have come into the conversation. Um, and this is one point I wanted to make on the various clinical applications of ketamine. One is we first encountered it for anesthesia, I think in children, if I'm not mistaken. But most recently, it's been used in much smaller doses. So this is the concentration in the blood. And so at much smaller concentrations in the blood, it might help depression. At higher doses, you can actually get anesthesia, and somewhere in the middle is psychedelic use. We have a neurologist that can comment on that. Yes, Michael.
Well, no, I at first heard of ketamine as an animal tranquilizer. It was used in the veterinary field, if I
Yes.
understood. And they then started trying it out on humans. So way back when I was probably an intern or a resident, a woman had come in, I believe it was ketamine, she had overdosed on, and we had to tie her down, 4-point restraints and so on. She had used it recreationally, if you will, but that's where it came. That's my understanding. That's where it
No,
came
Michael,
from.
can I correct that? So I think you're
Yeah.
talking about PCP, which is related,
Oh,
but
maybe it's PCP.
yeah, PCP causes those sort of agitated delusions. Ketamine was first developed and used quite extensively in Vietnam. It was a field anesthetic carried by the medics. You could give somebody, pretty heavy dose, on the order of, 5 milligrams per kilogram, 10 milligrams per kilogram, and you could basically amputate their leg. It's a very effective anesthetic. It's one of the top 10 drugs in the WHO's armamentarium worldwide. And what they did note, because it was used as an anesthetic for many, many years, and then it started being used as Special K in the sort of more psychedelic or rave scene. What they noticed anesthetically, though, is as people came off of the anesthetic dose, where you're just sort of laying there in a stupor, they would have these somewhat agitated or transitory periods where it would be a psychedelic. So as you drop down from that 1,000 or 2,000 nanograms per mil to the tenth of that, or even hundredth of that, people would have visions. And the best story I heard about that was it was used extensively in pediatrics, John, you're right, and still is used in pediatric anesthesia and in the ER where I used it. It is very effective. And the pediatric anesthesiologist would tell the kids, this is 6, 8, 10-year-old kids when they're anesthetizing them, and when you're coming out of the surgery, the best thing is you're going to be in the Spider-Verse. And it's going to be so cool, and you're going to see all kind, and I'm going to be right there with you. And of course, in the psychedelic realm, one of the pieces is people have to enjoy the quote trip. Now, if I can, I'm gonna correct your dosing there a little bit. We don't measure serum levels. It's a matter of how much we give. We either give it IV, which is 100%, so if you give 100, milligrams, you get 100 milligrams. Or we give it as a nasal spray, which is S-ketamine, pharmacologically repackaged to make money, basically. Or you can do it sublingually, which is what we do in therapy. And so we'll give 100 to 200 milligrams sublingually, of which about 30 to 40% is absorbed. And that's what we would call a psycholytic dose, where somebody can be in it, but not out of it. In other words, if you do an anesthetic dose, people aren't talking, they're sort of laying there. The psychedelic dose can be, on the order of three, probably 100 to 200 IM. So that's, quite a bit higher. And then the psycholytic dose is really to just take people into an edge where it's a dissociative anesthetic. It helps people remove the adhesion of the mind with an emotion, essentially. So if somebody's always had trauma and and you can go in and say, "Oh, that trauma you had, where your father beat you. Well, your father was beaten. Can you see that in a little more dissociated area?" Now, Christine calls it tofu. She says it's very bland and it really depends on the intention and the indication you give somebody as somebody's going in. Anyway, that's to comment about Musk specifically. Ketamine is, as with many psychedelics, can have an edge of godness, of oneness, of oceanic boundlessness, where you think you're connected to the whole universe, and you think your vision is, given by, whoever the spirit out there, and it can be like many of the psychedelics, kind of convincing of somebody that they might be on the right path. And that's with an occasional use. In depression, we use it every, sometimes weekly, but usually every 3 to 4 weeks to help people with insights and understanding about why they're depressed and to help them use their brain to get out of it. If you use a drug over and over and over, whether it's alcohol, nobody uses mushrooms like that, but MDMA or, just say alcohol, you're not using it to help soften you. You're using it to delude yourself and to create an alternative reality. And my best guess is, and he's got mushrooms and narcotics and ecstasy, which is MDMA. Who knows? Who knows? But certainly some of his sense of like, I am delivering God's purpose, and I know because I was told, is probably fit nicely in with Trump's megalomaniac, narcissistic shell. So I don't, I have not read reports of how much the ulcerative cystitis is an irreversible, nasty side effect. And I know of a few cases. It's usually with relatively chronic use, but not necessarily daily use. It can be somebody who's using it, every week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. There's some idiosyncratic part of it. That's probably, are there any questions that I can answer?
Well, question I would have is if he's using it, I bet a bunch of the people who were working under him
Uh,
were as stoned or out of it as he was, going into all these various federal agencies, probably whatever, thinking they were performing God's work.
yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, they don't mention marijuana, but that could be in the mix as far as stone goes. Um,
Well, I don't know what term to use, but I
yeah,
just think,
under the influence.
yeah.
Under the influence. Yeah, it's certainly possible. And delusion, I think the other piece that plays into it, and people get into almost a psychotic fugue at the edge of delusion and reality, where, look at him jumping up and down and, we're going to go to Mars. It's a delusion and it's destroying the planet. So one can hope that, I think one of the questions I have is Trump doing anything? He may be psychotic enough without it,
He's
but the answer
demanding.
is as Trump turns on it, is he going to turn and say it was the drugs, and all of a sudden we'll have a total whiplash against the RFK possible opening towards the use of psychedelics for trauma, for depression, or addiction, many of its good uses, and that remains to be seen.
Yeah, the thing, Trump is a famous teetotaler because of his family history. So he does not drink. But the one thing that I would worry about, and possibly a habit that he shares with RFK Jr., who admits openly to this life extension stuff, which includes testosterone.
Oh, interesting.
That's what I worry about.
That would fit.
But testosterone can affect your thinking also. And Trump is enough of a narcissist to take anything that would make him stronger. So we'll see. But RFK Jr. has admitted to using testosterone.
Huh.
Okay. So, well, and the New York Times says it's a serious habit. I mean, I know that Musk has admitted to using ketamine regularly to treat depression, uh, but uh, but he hasn't admitted publicly to ecstasy and psychedelic mushrooms, which is other people have noted him using at private gatherings.
John, I got it. The next two are not correct. The FDA has approved it for depression. As Spravato, which is a nasal spray, is used, and IV infusions are both FDA approved for treatment-resistant depression.
Well, but do you have to have a special license to?
Nope, nope. No
Okay.
special license. It's Schedule 3, which is what
Okay.
makes it so interesting. So
Okay.
that's not correct either. That is true for, well, MDMA and LSD are still only under investigatory. So there you do need a special license. But it's quite effective for depression, particularly suicidal depression that's been treatment resistant. I think I was just on a grand rounds with Herrick. It ought to be considered instead of ECT or the equivalent of ECT,
Yeah.
that kind of a level. But and then just the Matthew Perry was doing anesthetic doses. So
Oh,
if you did 4 quarts of vodka and got in your hot tub and died, would you call that death by vodka or would you call that death by stupidity? Right. So Perry, he was anesthetic and he failed to breathe. It's kind of like somebody driving their car 200 miles an hour and killing somebody. Would you blame the car? It's a clear misuse of the medicine.
yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
The black eye, easy. Musk told his son, named X, to punch him, and he did. So, but this would explain moments like this, where he gets so full of himself that he does the so-called Roman salute, but many of us associate that with somebody else. And so I thought this was interesting. I'll just leave that up for a second. Yeah. Um, so we've talked in the past about Musk's Mars dreams and how there was a couple of windows during Trump's um, term in office for him to use his rocket to launch to Mars, but that's not going to happen. The windows are going to close, and he's not going to be able to shoot off his rocket into these windows. Trump cutting Musk loose. It's not a surprise. I know many of us said, "How long is this going to last?" And it's when you look at his policies on immigration, Musk himself said that these special H visas for immigrants to work from India should have been allowed. The university funding, these tech bros certainly rely on research, and the tariffs for their products, Apple in particular. And so it's a problem. And then the commentariat are saying things that Trump has no actual arguments for anything. And Trump has turned on the Federalist Society because they're not walking lockstep with him. they were the ones that provided him with the judicial nominations that he obediently followed. But now he's breaking up with them. We've seen this before. And of course, the courts we talked about before, the very high success rate on challenging his policies, and this is the mastermind behind the Chinese tariffs, Peter Navarro, the rebellion against his leadership in tariffs continues to grow. Okay. So, Jim, I don't know if Jim found and sent in these official recommendations from the U.S. Preventive Service Task Force, which Jim and I were quite conversant with in our days of medical administration, answering to outside inspectors. Did you want to say anything in particular, Jim, on
I
breast,
can,
colon
well,
cancer, prostate cancer?
I can make a couple comments. For those not conversant with the issues, the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force is the gold standard by which the medical establishment establishes prevention screening recommendations. And it's a group of experts that's quite diverse in the field, a lot of prevention people, including primary care, but also the specialties that are often involved. And there was an effort recently to take this power they have away from them. I think it was there was a court, they I can't remember, but Trump and his minions were trying to reduce their influence, if not disband them. And I'm not sure where they are in the courts on that right now. But it would be, in my view, too bad if we lost this kind of diverse review, looking at the data as to what is useful and what is wasteful and what might cause harm. And so in this case, breast mammography has been quite controversial as to its frequency and when to start over the last few decades. And some people have been concerned about the risk of mammography, the increased radiation, the leading to invasive procedures and consequences through overscreening. And of course, others have been concerned about the underscreening. And so at this point, it's every 2 years after the age of 40, which is similar to what Europe has and is kind of a compromise, I guess, because if you ask the surgeons or the radiologists, they would want to do much more screening. Um, and there's an interesting development there with the dense breasts. As technology improves, you're going to miss more if you have dense breasts. So, but there's not enough data to show that it's worthwhile yet. Any questions about cancer screening or what I said in the intro?
Does this organization, USPSTF, do they also make recommendations for women who have been diagnosed with BRCA2?
I think they do. They have detailed recommendations on a number of things. And if you just Google it, you can then search for the BRCA recommendations. But I'm not sure that's from USPSTF, but there are pretty robust recommendations if there's family history, Ashkenazi Jew, different risk factors that would promote early screening. This is for the average woman, these recommendations are for without high risk factors, I believe. But it's just a summary, but it doesn't take into account a real strong family history, for example.
And colon cancer?
Colon cancer is a similar thing. We talked about when to stop, and I think it was mentioned that Kaiser stops at 70. Well, I don't know. That's not exactly what is recommended here. They stop at 75. And colonoscopy, while gastroenterologists, and many gastroenterologists make all their money from just, doing 6 colonoscopies in a day or whatever, or 10. But with the new fecal screening methods, with checking for, uh, you know, uh, proteins in the blood that are produced by cancer, you a lot of screening is now done with a simple fecal test. And then
Yeah.
if that's equivocal or there's a strong family history or whatever, there are lots of risk benefit decisions to be made, with your primary as to how to proceed. But there's a lot of, well, so the grade A means there's very strong indication to do screening, but a B is it's a less strong, the evidence is not uh, as fail-safe, if you will, and then C is just a modest recommendation. And because people don't live past, they die of their cancer or of other things quite often. So, that's the other consideration.
And Jim, John mentioned this, but screening is different from once we've detected a polyp. So
Right.
say if you had a polyp when you were 68, you might continue with colonoscopies, no longer for screening, but for surveillance.
Right.
Right.
And then the final one's prostate cancer. It's interesting that as soon as we talked about it, the Economist came out with a review of the literature. So, but I think we covered this pretty well. That it's not recommended, but it's an individual choice, and it comes down to values, really. What's your attitude towards risk, and talk to your physician, and an individual decision, as long as it's informed, and you know that if you start screening, you run the risk of over treatment that could end in side effects like incontinence and erectile dysfunction. Yeah, Michael.
I don't know if you're going to get into it, but a lot of insurance companies use these guidelines as saying they will or they won't pay for something. If you're, let's say, a 78-year-old man who wants to have a colonoscopy, let's just say, and you undergo the procedure, they say these guidelines are what they're going to go by for paying for that procedure. And I
Yeah.
don't know if that's been brought up, but a lot of
Well,
insurance companies, this is what they go by.
you're absolutely correct, just like immunizations. So when we when Bobby says that you don't need a COVID shot this year, if you're under, 65, they're not going to pay for it.
Yeah. David.
Yeah, well, unless you're Kaiser. But hot off the press, um, uh, social media, Elon Musk just posted this massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those of you who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. And the reply by the White House press secretary Levitt says, boys will be boys.
But remember, he's under the influence.
Right, they're going to blame it on the drugs.
Right.
Stunning.
Well, we predicted there'd be a breakup, and here we are. Here we are. Okay. So, how are we fixed on time here?
Well, it looks like we're about close.
Let me say one more thing about the PSA screening. Sometimes the physician will say, do you want it or not? And that's the smart thing to do, especially if you're under 70. But over 70, some doctors will add a PSA unbeknownst to and not ask the patient whether they want one or not, or explain the risks of doing it. Not, and that happened to me. So it's frustrating to see things happen without at least a discussion with the patient.
Yeah, I've dealt with a gentleman who's got a positive PSA and has been struck with anxiety for the last 5 years every time he has to go back in about whether it's up or it's down or it's up or it's down, and it literally is causing him to almost be neurotic and worry.
Yeah, the worried well.
Hey, John?
Yeah.
Now, this is changing the subject quite a bit, but have you followed at all with the PayPal mafia? Anyway, that has to do with the Thiel and Musk and how they're all related.
Yeah, we dealt with that early on.
I'm sorry, that was last week.
No, it was like a month ago. I'll look it up, Tom, and tell you which one you could, or I'll send you the link if I can remember it.
Interesting that this was just I think this last week with Bay Curious. I don't know if you're familiar with that podcast, but it was very interesting about that whole area of the PayPal mafia. So
Yeah, we dealt with Musk and what's his name? They go back to the 1990s.
right.
So yeah, it's quite an interesting history. So
Okay.
I'm going to create a cliffhanger so you'll come back next week. Cliffhanger is a book review that Michael sent me. It has to do with Latin American idealism, and the book is America, America. And do you want to say anything, Michael, as part of the cliffhanger that we're creating?
Well, I think I've just read the book review, not the entire book, but the guy I think he speaks to many of the subjects that you've talked about. One being, well, I guess he won his Pulitzer Prize for another book that had to do with the myth of the frontier and the manifest destiny. And now he's talking, it's interesting because he's comparing North America, or America as we think of it, to South America in terms of the kind of political turmoil and other things. Whereas we have had this endless expansion, or we think of it, the people in South America and maybe Central America hasn't been their experience.
Yeah, Okay, we've created a pretty good cliffhanger. Jim.
Yeah, I was just going to add that there was a wonderful interview of this author on the program Democracy Now! From Amy
Hmm.
Um, Goodman, I think it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, that link I've sent to John, and maybe you'll send it around, John,
Oh yeah.
because it's a really good interview of the author.
Okay, I will do that.
Then there's Thomas Friedman's latest column called "The Trumpian Strategy: Fire, Ready, Aim."
Hey, John, this is Tom. If you send that thing out about PayPal, send it to Bruce. That was Bruce talking about PayPal and not me.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
uh, uh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the PayPal mafia is. I mean, I've gotten things where I've been told something was charged to my PayPal account. And if that's what it is, phony charges that they claim. And of course, they want you to click through to see if you can fix it.
That's just spam. The PayPal mafia has to do with the triad, I think it was originally, of South African uh,
Yeah.
anti
Thiel and Musk.
apartheid favoring, with Peter Thiel.
Who
This
is
is,
also from South Africa.
Right.
yeah, exactly. And they were Nazi supporters. If you go back in the history, there's another interesting link on that I have.
Okay, yeah, Bruce, if you'll send me that uh
Now, the link, I will.
yeah,
So,
that link. Okay, everybody.
Oh, thanks.
See you next week, and we'll get that car off of the cliff.
okay.
Thanks, John.
All
All
right.
right. Bye.
Bye bye.
So you like my musical